Hello guys, welcome to another mixing tutorial. Today let's take a look at the tones on my cover of Strizzwald by Bulb. One of my favorite grooves of all time. There's finally an excuse to cover it on the channel, which is the Bulb Archives release. So I'm a happy boy because I've been playing this groove on drums for a few years now and having fun with it. It's cool to realize it make it a video. So let's go. Let's talk about my master bus at the end as usual. And let's talk about this drum sound. So this drum sound is my usual recent P4 drum sound that you can go check out at the currents mixing tutorial. So go to the Patreon page and type in currents and you'll get the full rundown of this P4 drum sound. But today's guitar tone is extremely mid-rangey with not a lot of brightness, which made the cymbals be way too bright for my usual. So there's a few changes to cymbals that we can go over here that I don't know if I'll be keeping on all the covers because the usual guitar tones I go for fit those very bright cymbals. Here's what I did today though. I added soothe and a low pass. This is a low pass, yes. And a low pass in Pro Q. So I am trying to make them softer, as you can guess. So Soothe is out here, very focused on the 9K area, trying to reduce very dynamically all those little spikes that make cymbals shine through. It's usually a good thing, but today it was a bad thing and a very exaggerated thing. So this goes on the bus of everything that has cymbals, which I call brass bus. So this includes rooms and spot mics. Overheads are the main culprit though. You can see it, I turned up the depth and turned up the sensitivity of the 9K region a lot so that it reacted to it more. You can hear it reduce all this horse shit together with the low pass at 15K. This really helps fit the cymbals into the more mid-rangey tones we have today. I'll turn those things off. First on. And if I turn on the master bus processing, that's when they blew up, right? So this is them on. Right? On my headphones it actually sounds okay, but as soon as I put them on the speakers that have a little bit of a more hyped high end, I realized it was pretty harsh. So there's that little cymbal control today. It's all that is different. You can go check out the currents mixing tutorial if you haven't already for this drum sound. Bass gutre. My usual DI. Sadly, the Dario string, as you can hear, it came out of the pack a little bit dead. This is not the best DI. Right? So this first thing is to eliminate this little whistle my bass does. By now, if you follow the tutorials, you know that. My bass has this little magnetic thing that's pretty bad under distortion. You just cut it before the distortion, which is Joel Wanasek Bus Glue bass. It's just doing what it does, compressing the low end. compressing the top end, which is barely being touched since there's so little of it because the string is fucked, right? And distorting the high end as well with the dedicated distortions here. Going for distortion A today. And we need to EQ it a little bit. Before we EQ it, I added just the tiniest little bit of extra bass with R bass harmonic generation. It's more of an in the mix thing. Really, really subtle. So I usually like to EQ that Jolwanasek bass distortion in the following manner. So the filters are commonplace, but today's filter is more aggressive because again, the guitar tone was softer, so the bass had to be softer as well. Not softer because there's a lot of mids, but like not that present in the high region. That takes care of some fizz already. The 500 region is problematic in this plugin. It's way too much. As well as the 3.2. It can sound cool, but this way it sounds a lot more controlled. Guitar tone. So I knew I wanted something very mid-rangey, old school bulb style, origins of djent guitar tone. So I thought of getting the 5150 out from the Will Putney and trying one of my favorite cabs in this plugin, which are very mid-rangey. So the Cabinet 3 is one of them. The other is Cabinet 4. Cabinet 4 is more of that hardcore grind, very honky. And 3 has more of that modern, sharp feel, which I thought I would work with. On the amp, turn down the gain a little bit. You didn't need that much of it for this djenty tone. And on the EQ, we worked up the mid-range a little bit. So we boosted 1200 and we boosted 1400. So there's that little bit of a mid bump. And we added that fizz that it needs because it doesn't have a lot. 5K, 5 dB with this shelf at 7K. Check out the difference on this EQ, it's pretty big. Yep, it really helps. Further EQing. It's all very, very subtle moves that add up. So high cut at 80, it's subs. We don't want subs. Palm mute control tool, so dynamic reduction of the 180 region. Yeah. And then the only important one is this harsh 2.3 thing. Other than that, it's very simple shaping. A little bit less of this. A little bit more of this. A little bit less of this. A little bit more of this. It all adds up. Just gives it a different shape, right? Then I open a new one to get rid of some stuff I didn't like. So there was some boominess still in that palm mute region that I could just remove completely, but I decided to remove it only on the center channel and leave it on the sides so that the low end that somehow gets summed into the center of these double tracked guitars, that gets removed and the guitars become a bit wider, which is a cool trick. And then it needed a little bit less of that mid-range. I added too much. Instead of going to the plugin and cutting it there, I did it here. And then just the tiniest bit of compression to help them sit on the spot. You can see the compressor just turns down the loudest notes so that we can bring the rest of them up. That's the base for our mix. Pretty cool, right? I am happy. This clean tone in the verse. It has my favorite format for a clean tone right now, which is splitting the coils on my humbuckers and just using the DI. Absolutely no amp sim. Just the DI like that. As soon as you put delay and reverb on it and you EQ it to a certain shape, that's as good as you'll need it to be. Sometimes better than cabs and IRs and all that amp sim shit. So stereo delay, quarter notes, very important. I like H delay by waves because it modulates, right? The repeats get slightly out of tune as you go. Big dreamy feel right there. 40% mix. And then my favorite plate reverb. 9 seconds, very big reverb. 50% mix, good blend. And get rid of a bunch of low end that we don't need. Instant length and even more low end cuts. That's usually all that you have to cut from these DIs if you like the shape of them. If you don't like the shape of them, give them more mids, give them less mids. Really like mine. So high cut 250. It's low information. We want this to be a high guitar. And this little dynamic thing might as well not have been dynamic. Just a low mid-range cut. And then this spooky one is based on that. With some changes. So what could those be? The delay is the same, a little bit less wet. The reverb is the same, but it's 12 seconds instead of 9, so it's longer. EQ is the same with a little bit less mids. And it has a limiter at the end because it has a lot of pick attack. We're just chopping the loudest pick noises. Yep. And the trick is that in another track, I shifted that up an octave and I'm blending them together. Ooh. Cool effect. I like it. Very nice. Very happy about that. These strings here. Spitfire Labs free, sounds great out of the box. That's it, out of the box. Just cut whatever unnecessary stuff there is. In my case, it tends to be low end. It controls that motherfucking loud ass cello that is playing the low note. And that is all. Easy as that. Piano. Out of the box, addictive keys as well. I just turned down the volume. This reverb, my dude, same setting as the creepy lead. Maybe I cut more low end. Then it's all about, once you get the reverb right, it's all about shaping it with EQ. I cut some low mids and some high mids and gave it some shine at 5K. Make it sound a bit more hi-fi there. That's it. Let's see how we blow this up in the master. So firstly, I like to shape my mix with Golfos a little bit. This guy's an automatic EQ that tends to make your mix a little bit brighter and more pleasing to the human ear with many different frequency bands. Hopefully you can really hear the shine it adds to the cymbals and also the low end balance that it creates dynamically. I'm a fan, not too much. Joel Wanasek Bus Glue Mix is my compressor. So this is where I get to run the mix into a first wall that usually the kick and snare will hit, and the kick and snare will then become the thing that balances the mix, and they'll start ducking the other instruments around them, which creates a lot of energy as I turn up the rest of the instruments into the compressor. Makes a big difference. No transformer option because the mix has a cool color, and this usually gives it either more low end or more brightness, and I didn't like him here. No small time gives you a little bit of stereo magic. So if I turn it on and off, it's pretty big. When I turn it off, the kick and snare are in space, and when I turn it on, everything rises to the same space. That's how I feel it. Linear multiband, so multiband compression is just like this compression here, but I get to control it a little bit more because it has 5 different frequency regions, which is cool. So if I want to turn down my guitars, I can turn down the mid-range compression. If I want to turn down my cymbals in a very high frequency material, which I did, I can compress the high end more. So that's why I like this as a final layer of control. But I also like to just run the mix flat through it because it tends to give it a little bit of a mid-range scoop, because it reacts more to that guitar one I showed first. Then tape. I usually use the tape guy when I want stuff to be more glued together, and since this mix is pretty simple, not a lot of elements to mush against each other, tape helps. Type C tape has more of a low end thing going on. It just glues stuff. Let's see if we can hear it. Definitely hear that again and listen to the bass. I think that's where the biggest difference is. And today I am not using Ozone for the limiter. I'm trying Pro L, so I'm trying the FabFilter limiter for most of my limiting. And for that reason, I set up an EQ before, because Ozone lets me set up an EQ before where I always have a little thing to reduce the bass, the kick subs going into the master. I'm soloing it. If you can hear that, you can hear how low that is. That's what I'm cutting. So I'm getting rid of those kick subs to make sure that the master doesn't pump excessively over shit that we can't even really hear. Then yeah, it's what you see here. I like to cut my kick and snare hard and maybe dig a little bit into the guitar level. That's how much limiting I usually like to do. You can see the kick and snare suffering for their lives, and the guitar level is just a little bit touched. Trying the modern style, I don't really know what this does. I'll be learning as we go along. And that is today's mix. So thank you guys so much for supporting, for watching. Be sure to ask any questions in the comments. Message me. Patreon, you know I reply. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.